The wizards from the coast have just released Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk, and I'm gonna talk at you about it. I'll let you know if it's any good, and particularly if it's worth your money. And I wanted to say right up top that my copy is not a review copy. I paid my own hard-earned American currency for this, and I'm not sponsored by WotC in any way. This is a 100% unbiased review. I will start off with a summary, then tell you what works, tell you what doesn't work, and give you my overall thoughts at the end. There will be spoilers ahead, so you've been warned. If you're wanting to play this, click away now. If you're thinking about running this, then you obviously don't care about spoilers. You probably already know that the first part of this book is a quote-unquote remaster of the classic 2014 Lost Mine of Phandelver. That's mine, not mines. There's only one mine. My old physical copy of this adventure is dog-eared and filled with scribblings in the margins and post-it notes, which brings me joy anytime I scroll through it. Anyway, the first third of this full-length adventure is mostly reprinted, and what I most wanted to know as I'm reading through it is, have they fixed what I consider to be the major, game-breaking problem from the 2014 LMOP? That is, have they solved the issue of the original's BBEG being uninteresting and not well integrated into the adventure? Because when I've run LMOP, which I have a few times, that's the main thing I had to change. I had to work the villain into the adventure because the party doesn't meet him until the very end. That's not a good sign if your party meets the BBEG and they say, wait, who are you? To answer that question right away, yes, this adventure fixes that. It does so by making the Black Spider no longer the BBEG here, thankfully. As to how, we'll answer that question as we get a little deeper into the module. Like I said, the first 4 chapters of the 8-chapter level 1 to 12 adventure are basically reprinted. They get some minor touch-ups like a few gender changes, such as Elmer Barthen is now Elmina Barthen. Also species swaps, such as Darren Eatermath is now a drow. I was already doing the gender changes myself, like I always make Sildar Hallwinter into Sally Hallwinter. Let's now dig into a quick summary of each chapter. Chapter 1, the heroes get a job from Gundren Rockseeker to deliver a wagon load of goods to Phandalin. Along the way, they're ambushed by goblins and Gundren is kidnapped. They hear about a map to a lost mine. They might hear about weird, glowing green goblins who will become prominent in later chapters. The excellent Kragmaw Hideout Goblin Cave is unchanged. Chapter 2 takes place in Phandalin, where we meet the townsfolk. They're being harassed by a gang known as the Red Brands. This leads to a confrontation in a dungeon under a ruined manor house. Yay, Phandalin is saved from the thugs. But listen up. The adventure text says, by the time the Mind Flayer fanatics' plot against Phandalin becomes clear in later chapters, the character's attachment to one or more NPCs in town should encourage them to save it. And there's a sticky wicket in it. As a DM, getting your players to emotionally invest in the Phandalin NPCs becomes a critical element as to whether this entire adventure works or not. Not that that problem is unique to this adventure, but it's worth mentioning. Also, the party may hear more about the strange glowy goblins in this chapter. Chapter 3 is an open-world portion of the original adventure, where there are a number of different plot hooks the players can pursue. This eventually leads to Kragmaw Castle, where they can recover the map to the mine. Remember that lost mine from earlier? Of all the revised parts in this adventure, Chapter 3 has the least changes to it as far as I can tell. It's still just a bunch of random side quests that could all lead to revealing the mine's location. And Chapter 4 delves into that mine, finally facing the spider. Chapter 4 also seems largely unchanged from the original adventure, which is kinda disappointing. More on that in a minute. Chapter 5 gets into the Obelisk section, which promises to finally explain these mysterious, towering objects that have been popping up in various WotC adventures over the years. Tomb of Annihilation, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, all of these have contained weird obelisks with little explanation. Maybe other adventures too, but those are the ones that come to mind. I won't spoil the actual reveal, but I'll just say it's not as grand as I would have hoped for something they've been teasing for a decade. Chapter 5 kicks off the back half of the adventure by sending goblins to Phandalin to do bad stuff. Weird things are starting to happen all over town. People are missing. The strange gerblins are causing havoc. There are a few different crime scenes for the party to investigate, eventually pointing them to the goblin boss organizing these shenanigans. This leads to an old Duergar? Anyway, a dark dwarf outpost near Phandalin. We meet the psionic goblins, which are actually pretty cool, a nice flavor twist on the standard GURB. Anyway, the party fights these foes, rescues 3 of the kidnapped hostages, and learns that Phandalin is directly in danger. There's a trio of mind flayers sending goblins to recover pieces of a shattered obelisk for an unknown reason. These baddies have been communicating with the boss of these goblins, giving him orders. More pieces and more hostages can be found in 3 separate locations, giving the party a reason to keep on adventuring. These further kidnap victims are to be offerings to the mind flayers, and somehow the freaky far realm is involved. Chapter 6 is about chasing after 3 different obelisk pieces at 3 different locations in the Underdark below Phandelver. The party has to stop the mind flayers from receiving the last pieces they need to complete their ritual. The book now reveals the sinister plans of the trio of BBEGs, turn everyone in and around Phandelver into mind flayers. They're starting a new colony. The players don't fully know all of this yet, but they should probably know some of it. This chapter features one neat little side quest about investigating a cow who has started sprouting tentacles from its back. Yuck, I love it. The party can recover as many as all 3 of the obelisk fragments, but no hostages. Sorry Mario, your princess is in another castle. In chapter 7, the situation in Phandelver is growing worser and worser. People are mutating. Party goes deep into the Underdark chasing after those 3 Mind Flayer fanatics. They explore a dungeon with some pretty intense monsters and weird encounters. Ultimately, the party discovers the baddies have fled into the Far Realm, setting up our final confrontation. Chapter 8 takes place in a super weird Far Realm location called the Briny Maze. It's full-on Bizarro land. The opening section describes this area as, quote, unpleasantly moist, which should tell you all you need to know. The Mind Flayer trio is attempting to complete their ritual to turn Phandelver into the beginning of a new Mind Flayer empire on the material plane. So the party navigates this bonkers upside down, confronts the baddies, then ultimately fights their mini-god and thus saves Phandelver. So that's your summary. Now let's talk about what this adventure does well and not so well. The main thing it does well is give the party a juicy ticking clock. Better hurry up and stop those mind flayers before they complete the ritual, assuming of course your party cares about saving the town. Also, the later dungeons are all pretty good. Next, it gives custom versions of the vanilla character creation backgrounds to tie the PCs to the adventure. Like a new custom acolyte background says, the frontier town of Phandelver is resilient, but organized religious resources are scarce. Your temple in Neverwinter sent you to Phandelver to pray and offer communion with like-minded faithful. This is good. More hooks is always good. Also, it offers a couple of alternatives to the standard beginning of being hired by Gundren Rockseeker. Instead, you could be on a mission for the Harpers or the Order of the Gauntlet, or you could even mix and match these within members of the party. Further, as the influence of the Mind Flayers and their Far Realm schemes grow in Phandelver, there's a handy chart of changes that happen to the town. The sky turns gray and then green. Odd fungi starts to grow in places. The townspeople eventually become violent and sprout tentacles. Weird stuff, and I'm here for it. These changes might even affect the party, and there's another table for how that manifests. Other things it does well. There's actually now a much needed map of the Goblin Ambush in Chapter 1. Finally. Also a map of Old Owlwell and Wyvern Tor in Chapter 3. There's new art and a lot more of it. Not all the new art is great, but generally it's a welcome improvement. And I do like that each artist is listed as a caption on each piece, which I don't think they used to do. Some of these new dungeons are quite good, like Zorzula's Rest in Chapter 5 and Gibbet's Crossing in Chapter 6. If nothing else, steal these for your own campaigns. There are some good monsters and magic items in the back, although I haven't been able to test any of them out in actual play. Look at this flesh melt, ugh. Or check out this encephalon cluster. I'm gonna have nightmares about this one for sure. This Ring of the Orator has a cool feature in that it projects your voice up to a mile away. Requires attunement though, which is kinda harsh. Okay, so what does it not do well? The first 4 chapters and the last 4 chapters are not nearly as integrated as I would like. Yes, the psionic goblins are foreshadowed with a few appearances early on, but I wanted more. I wanted Venomfang from Thundertree to be tied into later encounters. I wanted Nesnar the Spider and his hunt for the Forge of Spells to have a bigger meaning in subsequent events. Why couldn't he be working for the Mind Flayers like the later chapter mini-bosses? As far as I can tell, he doesn't come up again after Chapter 4. Really, the only thing connecting the new stuff with the old stuff are these random mentions of the psionic goblins throughout the first 4 chapters. To me, this feels pretty lazy. Like Trey and Matt from South Park said, between every beat of your story should be a therefore. This happened, therefore, now this happens. This adventure fails to do that, going from chapters 1 through 4 onto chapters 5 through 8. They could have integrated it all better, but they're leaving it up to us DMs to do that work. Boo. Also, the leveling is a bit off in places. The adventure assumes that you're using Milestone, and some of the level ups seem to happen too quickly. I can't say that with full confidence because I haven't played in or run this yet, but just reading it, it doesn't feel right. So, in summary, conclusion, overall, I think it's pretty good. Phandelver is a good starting town with quality NPCs, and the adventure does enough interesting stuff with them that I think it's worthwhile. If you've already run Elmop and are pondering getting this for your group, I would say skip it. Transition into Storm King's Thunder instead. But starting from level 1, this adventure works with a little bit of work on top to provide more connective tissue. I would certainly at least make some adjustments like bringing back Venomfang from Thundertree and the NPC Redoth for later parts so it feels more like one adventure instead of two separate adventures smushed together. But to answer my initial question, is it worth your money? Yeah. I don't love it, but it does enough right that you could probably run it and have fun at your table. Or I would say it has enough cool locations and encounters that you can rip it into little pieces and drop various elements into your own campaign. Sorry I can't give you an incredibly strong opinion one way or the other, but like I said, this is an honest, unbiased review. Like most things in life, it's a mixed bag. Until next time, this is GM Jim. Now go out there and fight some Psy Gerblins.